Hey everybody, on Facebook to start with, this is Scott Greenberg. I'm the owner and winemaker for Convergent Zone Cellars. It looks like, are we on Instagram? Am I on Instagram?
You have to send a request to join.
Okay. Well, I think I'm on Instagram. I don't see myself there, so hopefully I am. So we're going to get started on tonight's tasting. We're going to be tasting through 3 wines. The first is our Three Forks Rosé.
We can't hear you but not see you. We can hear you but not see you.
Okay, so we're going to try to fix this. Sorry, everybody. I will be right there. Why is that not working? Okay.
No video, no.
Oh, I know why. There we go. There was a last second change in hardware, so all right, now we got it all working. Hello everybody on Instagram and on Facebook. So again, Scott Greenberg, owner and winemaker with Convergent Zone Cellars. My wife Monica is here directing the show and watching also. So we're going to start with our Three Forks Rosé. This is a, just check to make sure. Okay, this is 100% Pinot Gris from Gamache Vineyard in Columbia Valley. So where that's located is, it's about this little black dot right there is where Gamache Vineyard is located. This is our 3rd vintage of Rosé. And the first 2 were from Ciel de Cheval Vineyard in the Red Mountain area, and we switched up the vineyards this year. So this one, compared to the last 2 vintages, this is from 2019. This one is a little bit lighter. It's a little bit softer than the prior 2 vintages, but still just as fruity and wonderful. It's also a little drier. It's got 0.1% residual sugar. The past couple years, I think it was around 0.5, 0.6%. So the first thing we do is get our wine glass. Hopefully you've, if you're tasting along with me, have poured yourself some wine. And the first thing you do is smell it and then swirl. The reason you do that is the swirling releases some more aromatics, gets it integrated more with oxygen. It's always nice to just be able to smell the wine before you swirl it. Obviously, it's got a little bit of oxygen when you pour it, but that's a good way to find out what the aromatics, how they come out with oxygen. So I'm getting a lot of like strawberry, maybe a little bit of cotton candy. So I would expect more on the prior year vintages with a little bit of sweetness. But still, very refreshing wine. Now we're going to taste it. You see people doing this kind of thing. Swishing it around your mouth, so you suck in a little bit of air. Does the same thing about getting a little more oxygen. Helps release some of the flavors. The swishing it around your mouth gets the wine to cover your entire palate. Not just your tongue, the sides of your mouth, the underside of your tongue, your teeth, I mean everywhere, because you've got so many different points in your mouth that will react to the wine that you want to. Yeah. All right, so question. How do you get the color for the Pinot Gris? Good question. So Pinot Gris grapes are actually, they make a white wine. We actually make a white Pinot Gris. But the grapes themselves are darkly colored. They're kind of a purplish, dark pink color. And what we do is we crush those grapes first and let the grape skins and the juice sit together for, in all 3 years we've done this, has been about 3 days. And we wait till we get the color we want. Actually, we go a little bit darker than what we ultimately end up with because the color will dissipate during fermentation. So we Don't ferment yet. We let the grape skins and the juice sit together for 3 days, and then we suck out the juice with a pump, and then we press the grape skins just like we would with a fermented red wine. Then we end up with some pinkish, orangish grape juice that we put in a stainless steel tank, and then we're able to do fermentation right from there. So that's how we end up with the color. That was a good question. I also get a little bit of pink grapefruit with this. A lot of Washington white and rosé wines have that little bit more of a tropical feeling to them. We did 1.5 tons of Pinot Gris on this, and then we did a 34-day fermentation. I think that's, if not the longest, one of the longest fermentations I've ever done. Again, in a stainless steel tank, but we are able to chill it down and manage that fermentation.
How did you get started?
How did we get started? Well, that's a good question while we go to wine number 2. So let me tell you, get wine number 2 if you're tasting along with me at home, if you're playing the game at home. This is Squall wine. This is a Cabernet Sauvignon from Finney Hill Vineyard in the Horse Heaven Hills. I've been making Squall wine either mostly Cab, 100% Cab, or Cabernet Blend since 2011. Actually, I'm sorry, since, I think 2011. So we'll talk about this in a minute. So I got started out in Woodinville in the Warehouse District. We started, first vintage was 2008, but we actually got licensed in 2010. We made our wines in another winery for a couple of years while we were getting started. Very common thing to do. Through just an enjoyment of wine. And then I took some courses at South Seattle College, give them a shout out. That's kind of basically how we started the winery. Now we're here in North Bend, built the winery next to our house for those who don't know. So if you want to buy wine and come by and pick it up, I'm usually here. Just don't come at 3 in the morning, although I might actually be up sometimes. All right, so Squall wine. So the first thing you notice is the dark color. I really like dark color in my red wines. I make them that way, or try to make them that way. The dark color doesn't necessarily translate into anything different in the flavor or the aroma. You might get a little more tannin because of the darkness means that it's maybe extracting more from the skins, which includes tannins. But since I don't use a lot of new oak barrels, I don't add any more tannin from the oak into my wine, or I add very little tannin, the oak. But I like dark colored wines. I think, one of the first things you do with a wine is you look at it. And if I saw Pinot Noir this dark, I would think that maybe it's not going to be something I like, because Pinot Noir generally is a lighter colored wine. There's another question from the audience.
French oak?
French oak. Well, on this one was 32 months and 25% new French oak. So what that basically means is if I have 4 barrels of wine, which I did on this wine, one of those 4 was a new French oak barrel. The rest were neutral barrels, which means the barrels have been used before. And if you think of a tea bag and you're making a cup of tea, if you use that tea bag 3 or 4 times, or you're making 3 or 4 cups of tea for company, when we could have company, and you keep using that tea bag, by the time it gets to the end, there's very little tea flavor left in it because it's all kind of leached out into the hot water. Same thing with an oak barrel. Eventually, there's no more oakiness that comes from that barrel. So that's what we call a neutral barrel. Okay, so what do we smell on this? So typically with Cabernet Sauvignon, it's a lot of black fruit. So a lot of black cherry, blackberry, black plum. Somebody once said crushed black roses. So maybe a little bit of rose petal on it. I'm getting a little bit of like cedar and a little bit of smokiness. Maybe a little bit of vanilla. and that the last three are things that might come from the oak. Another little factoid is generally French oak gives off more of a vanilla kind of character to the wine, and American oak gives off more of a coconut character to the wine. We'll get into American oak in the next wine. Okay, so sift that around. Something else you often find in Cabernet, or sorry, in Washington Cabernet is a bit of like vegetalness, like green bell pepper, and that's really characteristic of a Washington Cabernet. Not getting it so much in here tonight. It might just be because this wine is fairly cold, or as you can see, we're actually in the winery. So the first thing I'm getting on this is a lot of juiciness. My winemaking style is to make wines with a little higher acidity, a little lower, which means a little lower pH. What that does is it gives the wine more acidity, allows it to blend better with different kinds of foods. There's another question from the audience.
What vineyards are the cab grapes from?
Thank you. So 96% from Phinney Hill Vineyard, 2% Coyote Canyon Vineyard, which is also Horse Heaven Hills, which is where Phinney Hill is located, and 2% from Gamache Vineyard, same vineyard we got the Pinot Gris from in the Columbia Valley. I'll talk about labeling maybe with the next wine, because that's kind of well, I can do it with this one in a moment. So what are we tasting on the wine? If you've had a chance to taste it, again, some dark fruits, a lot of blackberry. I do get a bit of almost like a little bit of coffee. I like that in wine. Kind of gives it some depth and character. And I'm getting a lot of earthiness to it too, and that's what we call minerality, which really is the minerals from the earth, basically. And then a little bit more mocha. Like right now, after taking a sip of the wine, I'm getting a little bit of mocha. And then the finish is really smooth, a little bit of tannin. This wine, should have talked about what these wines go well with. Well, the Pinot Gris Rosé goes with things like cheese and crackers and summer salads, especially if you have like a strawberry vinaigrette on a salad. Grilled chicken, grilled veggies, that would be really good. You know, rosé is really good in the summertime. This one can go with, again, sort of roasted and grilled meats, good friends and stormy nights. So that's what this one's about. Let's see, we kind of looking at some notes here. We did about a 7 to 10 day fermentation on these grapes, which is fairly typical for my reds. And we made 98 cases of this wine. So this is one of my favorites. We'll just go ahead and finish this. So I'm seeing we've got Monica's giving me the Instagram questions, and I'm trying to read if there's any Facebook questions. I don't see any, so if I miss them on Facebook, I'll go back later and add them.
Had the rosé with pork tonight and said it was lovely.
The rosé with pork tonight, and it was lovely. I imagine it would be. See, I'm drinking along with you. I'm home. So, all right. The final wine for the evening is Virga. Let's see if anybody can comment on what they think Virga means in the weather world. So while you're thinking about that, this is our 2017 Virga. This is a new release for us. This is 55% Mourvedre, 35% Grenache, and 10% Syrah. So this is kind of our homage to the France's Southern Rhone Valley. The vineyards on this were, it's new, so I can't remember all the vineyards. The Mourvedre came from Weinbau Vineyard. The Grenache came from Ciel de Cheval Vineyard in Red Mountain. And the Syrah was from Coyote Canyon. So let me bring this back and kind of show everybody where some of these vineyards are located. So we talked about there's Gamache Vineyard for the Pinot Gris and the Syrah in this one, and we had a little bit of Cab in the last one. Right about here in the southern edge of the Horse Heaven Hills, that's where Finney Hill is located, and then Coyote Canyon is just a little bit north of them on the same road. And then Weinbau Vineyard is up here in the Wahluke Slope, so just about 15 minutes or so east of Mattawa over there. Red Mountain is, Ciel de Cheval is Red Mountain, and that's the warmest grape growing region in the state, and then Wahluke Slope is generally the second grape growing region. Second warmest grape growing region. Okay, so now we're on to three totally different grapes. So I'll talk about labeling for a moment. So you can see on Squall Line, I don't know if you guys can see this, it's kind of hard. So this says Squall Line, which is our name of our wine, and then it says Cabernet Sauvignon. So 75% of the grapes that went into this bottle have to be Cabernet Sauvignon for us to put that on the front. So if it just says Cabernet Sauvignon, it can be anywhere from 75 to 100% Cab. Then Horse Heaven Hills, all of our wines have to have an AVA, American Viticultural Area. You have to have 85% of the grapes from that AVA. So if I didn't, I would just up this one level and probably label it Columbia Valley. So I can have a wine that's 100% from Horse Heaven Hills and still label it Columbia Valley because it's also 100% from Columbia Valley. And then the last one, well, two more, and they're both the same rule, the vineyard and the year. So to put that on the front of the bottle, you have to have 95% of the grapes from that vineyard. So we do, in this case, we have 96% from Finney Hill. And that was somewhat deliberate when we blended this, was we wanted to make sure we could label it Finney Hill Vineyard. And then the year also has to be 95% from that year. So we've got a Grenache out where only 90% of the Grenache was from 2015, the other 10% is from 2014. So we have to label it what's called a non-vintage. So anytime you see a wine that doesn't have a year on it, it might just be how they're marketing the wine and labeling the wine, or it could be that they don't meet that 95%. So what we do when we have a blend, on your phone, look like I'm still going. When we have a blend, we can actually list the blend on the back of the bottle. So that's what we choose to do with our blends. All right, let's taste Virga, Mourvèdre, Grenache, and Syrah. So let's smell it first. And again, a lot of blackberry, like blackberry jam, a lot of black pepper. Mourvèdre and Syrah are notorious for pepper, kind of darkness in the wine is what I call it. Getting a little bit of vanilla, cedar, maybe some sandalwood, just some kind of woodiness to it. Which is interesting because I would have expected a little bit of coconut on this one. And the reason is we had 30% of this wine was fermented or aged in a new Minnesota oak barrel. So from the Great Northwest, or Great Midwest, Upper Midwest. And then the other 70% were in neutral French barrels. So this was one of the first wines I've released that had a large American oak component to it. And I really like how it came out in this new wine. So let's taste it. So for those of you who like big wines, this is a big wine. Both of these reds could probably age. They're good. They're great now, but I think these reds could age for about 8 or 9 years minimum, and still be really soft and juicy and wonderful after that amount of time. So the flavors, again, I'm getting that blackberry. I'm getting a lot of baking spice, some wet rock, Again, a little bit of that woodiness. Just a fun wine to have. And we've made this one for probably 6 or 7 years. The pairing on this one is lamb. Don't eat it with anything else. I'm just kidding. Lamb is a great, especially just like a roasted leg of lamb or something on your smoker or barbecue. Lamb and these 3 grapes, Mourvedre, Grenache, and Syrah, any combination is a great pairing. We also like this with goat cheese. We've had it with sautéed mushrooms. We've also had it with just a steak. So that's the kind of thing I would pair this with.
Grass-fed beef too? Yes.
Grass-fed beef? Absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't have to be. We're not particular on there. So again, a 7 to 10 day fermentation. This was in oak for about 20 months. And yeah, it's a great wine. So all 3 of these wines are available here at the winery. Right now, we're still closed for tastings. We don't have regular hours. Our normal hours are Saturdays from 1 to 5. But since COVID-19, we decided we would actually be a lot more flexible and just offer to people, if you order wine through our website, you can indicate whether you want it shipped, delivered, or pick up at the winery. Deliveries, in and around North Bend, Issaquah, Snoqualmie, that area. Yeah, hopefully we'll open in phase 2 of the state's reopening plan, which would be the first Saturday of June. We'll see how that looks and see what we can do to keep social distancing and offer tasting. We will be at the North Bend Farmers Market, which is still scheduled to open on June 11th, I believe, whatever the second Thursday is. However, we are unable to do tastings due to COVID-19. So we'll be there just selling our wine. And many of you who are local already know our wines and love to have you come by. And that's another way you can pick up your wine. So any other questions from Instagram? Monica? No. Nope. And I don't really see any, moisture. What Teresa asked about moisture. Not really sure what she means. Oh, Virga. Thank you. I was like...
Oh, yeah, someone guessed on here, too.
Yeah. Virga is precipitation that evaporates before it touches the ground. So we thought that was a fun name. Some people have called it other things that sound alike, but it's definitely not true. So I also want to thank our great vineyard partners, including Winebow and Sagemore Vineyards, since Lacey's watching. Hi, Lacey. And hopefully we'll do this again sometime. We'll see how it goes, and everybody stay safe out there, and we'll talk to y'all later.